afternoon, everyone. I have several statements I want to make today, starting with a statement about the Islamic Republic of Iran. The United States is monitoring the ongoing protests in Iran closely. We condemn strongly any acts of violence committed by this regime against the Iranian people and are deeply concerned by reports of several fatalities. We've been at that since the beginning of this administration. The Islamic Republic must cease violence against its own people and should immediately restore the ability of all Iranians to access a free and open internet. The world's watching. The Iranian people will enjoy a better future when their government begins to respect basic human rights, abandons its revolutionary posture and its destabilizing foreign policy in the region, and behaves simply like a normal nation. The choice is clearly with the regime. Continuing with Iran. President Rouhani recently announced that Iran will begin uranium enrichment activities at the Fordow facility. Therefore, the United States will terminate the sanctions waiver related to the nuclear facility at Fordow, effective December 15th, 2019. The right amount of uranium enrichment for the world's largest state sponsor of terror is zero. Iran originally constructed Fordow as a fortified underground bunker to conduct secret uranium enrichment work, and there is no legitimate reason for Iran to resume enrichment at this previously clandestine site. Iran should reverse its activity there immediately. Iran's supreme leader is reverting to his tried and true method of using nuclear brinksmanship to extort the international community into accepting the regime's destabilizing activity. The United States rejects this approach completely and calls on all nations to do the same. The only viable way forward is through comprehensive negotiations that address the full range of Iran's threats in their entirety. Iran's most recent action is yet another clear attempt at nuclear extortion that will only deepen its political and economic isolation from the world. I also want to spend just a minute talking about Iraq. For the last few weeks, the United States has watched the protests very, very closely. We support the Iraqi people as they strive for a prosperous Iraq that is free of corruption and Iranian malign influence. We've stated clearly that Iraq's leaders must protect human rights as Iraqis lift their voices to secure a flourishing democracy. Our calls are consistent with the Trump administration's track record as being a force for good throughout Iraq. We've worked with the Iraqi security forces to take down the ISIS caliphate and will continue to make sure it cannot reemerge. The United States remains the largest humanitarian donor to Iraq, providing more than $2 billion in food, water, medicine, and shelter since 2014 alone. And we're the largest donor as well to stabilization, rebuilding more than 500 schools, 100 health centers, 50 water treatment plants, with many more projects coming online soon. Now our commitment continues. We will not stand idle while the corrupt officials make the Iraqi people suffer. Today I'm affirming the United States will use our legal authorities to sanction corrupt individuals that are stealing Iraqis' wealth and those killing and wounding peaceful protesters. Like the Iraqi people taking to the streets today, our sanctions will not discriminate between religious sect or ethnicity. They will simply target those who do wrong to the Iraqi people, no matter who they are. Turning now to Israel. The Trump administration is reversing the Obama administration's approach towards Israeli settlements. U.S. public statements on settlement activities in the West Bank have been inconsistent over decades. In 1978, the Carter administration categorically concluded that Israel's establishment of civilian settlements was inconsistent with international law. However, in 1981, President Reagan disagreed with that conclusion and stated that he didn't believe that the settlements were inherently illegal. Subsequent administrations recognized that unrestrained settlement activity could be an obstacle to peace, but they wisely and prudently recognized that dwelling on legal positions didn't advance peace. However, in December 2016, at the very end of the previous administration, Secretary Kerry changed decades of this careful bipartisan approach by publicly reaffirming the supposed illegality of settlements. After carefully studying all sides of the legal debate, this administration agrees with President Reagan. The establishment of Israeli civilian settlements in the West Bank is not per se inconsistent with international law. I want to emphasize several important considerations. First, look, we recognize that as Israeli courts have, that legal conclusions relating to individual settlements must depend on an assessment of specific facts and circumstances on the ground. Therefore, the United States government is expressing no view on the legal status of any individual settlement. The Israeli legal system affords an opportunity to challenge settlement activity and assess humanitarian considerations connected to it. Israeli courts have confirmed the legality of certain settlement activities and has concluded that others cannot be legally sustained. Second, we're not addressing or prejudging the ultimate status of the West Bank. This is for the Israelis and the Palestinians to negotiate. International law does not compel a particular outcome nor create any legal obstacle to a negotiated resolution. Third, the conclusion that we will no longer recognize Israeli settlements as per se inconsistent with international law is based on the unique facts, history, and circumstances presented by the establishment of civilian settlements in the West Bank. Our decision today does not prejudice or decide legal conclusions regarding situations in any other parts of the world. And finally, calling the establishment of civilian settlements inconsistent with international law hasn't worked. It hasn't advanced the cause of peace. The hard truth is, there will never be a judicial resolution to the conflict, and arguments about who is right and wrong as a matter of international law will not bring peace. This is a complex political problem that can only be solved by negotiations between the Israelis and the Palestinians. The United States remains deeply committed to helping facilitate peace, and I will do everything I can to help this cause. The United States encourages the Israelis and the Palestinians to resolve the status of Israeli settlements in the West Bank in any final status negotiations. And further, we encourage both sides to find a solution that protects the security and welfare of Palestinians and Israelis alike. Turning now to Hong Kong. The United States is gravely concerned by the deepening political unrest and violence in Hong Kong, including the standoffs between protesters and police at Hong Kong Polytechnic University and other campuses. We've repeatedly called for restraint from all parties in Hong Kong. Violence by any side is unacceptable. The Hong Kong government bears primary responsibility for bringing calm to Hong Kong. Unrest and violence cannot be resolved by law enforcement efforts alone. The government must take clear steps to address public concerns. In particular, we call on Chief Executive Carrie Lam to promote accountability by supplementing the Independent Police Complaints Council review with an independent investigation into the protest-related incidents. As the United States government has said repeatedly, the Chinese Communist Party must honor its promises to the Hong Kong people, who only want the freedoms and liberties that they have been promised in the Sino-British Joint Declaration, a UN-filed treaty. And finally, Bolivia. The Bolivian government announced Friday the expulsion of hundreds of Cuban officials for their country. It was the right thing to do. Cuba wasn't sending doctors and officials to Bolivia to help the Bolivian people, but rather to prop up a pro-Cuba regime headed by Evo Morales, who sought to maintain his grip on power through electoral fraud. Bolivia now joins Brazil and Ecuador in recognizing the Cuban threat to freedom. In each case, these governments, free of outside interference, have acted to protect their own national sovereignty and to defend their own citizens' interests. Bravo, Bolivia. I'm happy to take a couple of questions.
Matt.